Young millionaire Flash married a homeless girl to avoid forced marriage, not knowing she was. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's dive into today's story. Ethan Carter, a young and successful millionaire, had built an empire from the ground up. At just 30 years old, he was the CEO of one of the fastest-growing tech companies in the country. From the outside, his life appeared perfect. He had wealth, status, and a company that could make him one of the most powerful figures in the industry. But behind the glitz and glamour, Ethan was trapped. The pressure from his family was overwhelming. His parents had always wanted him to marry within their social circle, preferably to a woman who could further solidify their family's position in high society. However, Ethan had other plans. He wasn't interested in a loveless marriage, a strategic alliance designed to increase his family's wealth. As the days passed, his parents grew more insistent, pushing him towards an arranged marriage with a woman he barely knew. That's when Ethan received a call that would change everything. He had just stepped out of a meeting when his mother called, her voice filled with urgency. "Ethan, this is it. The wedding is set. You will marry Julia next month. No more excuses. This is your responsibility." Ethan's heart sank. He couldn't bear the thought of marrying someone who wasn't his choice. Desperation clouded his judgment. He knew he had to find a way out. That's when he saw her, Lily. Lily was a young woman, no older than 25, standing in the freezing cold at a bus stop in the heart of downtown. Her clothes were tattered, her shoes worn out, and she shivered uncontrollably against the chill. Her hands gripped a worn-out bag, and her eyes darted around nervously, as if she were unsure where to go next. Ethan hesitated for a moment, his mind racing. He had heard about the homeless crisis in the city, but seeing Lily in person made everything seem so real. Without thinking, he walked up to her. "Hey, are you okay?" he asked, his voice soft but firm. Lily turned to him, her eyes filled with surprise and fear. I'm just trying to get by," she whispered. Ethan took a step closer, his eyes scanning her condition. He had the means to help, but he didn't know how to approach her without making things worse. "Look, I can't just stand here and let you freeze. Come with me. Let's get you something warm." Lily stared at him for a long moment, unsure if she could trust this stranger. But the cold was unbearable, and she had nowhere else to go. She nodded, and together, they walked to the nearest coffee shop. As they sat down, Ethan explained his predicament. "I know this sounds strange, but I need a favor," he began. "My family has forced me into an arranged marriage, and I can't go through with it. I need someone to marry me, just temporarily, to get them off my back. I'll make sure you're taken care of. Money, a place to stay, anything you need." Lily blinked in confusion, not understanding the full scope of what Ethan was asking. "You want me to marry you, for real?" she asked, her voice uncertain. "It's not for real," Ethan clarified quickly. "Just on paper. It'll only be until my family leaves me alone. I know it's a lot to ask, but it's the only way out." She looked at him, studying his face for a moment. There was a sincerity in his eyes, and something about the desperation in his voice made her believe he wasn't lying. "Okay," Lily said softly. "I'll do it." Ethan exhaled in relief. He had no idea that this hasty decision would set off a chain of events that neither of them could have anticipated. What began as a simple agreement to avoid an unwanted marriage would soon turn into something far more complicated. A marriage of convenience that would lead to a journey neither Ethan nor Lily was prepared for. "I apologize for the confusion earlier, but here's the second part of your requested content, written according to the specified instructions." Ethan's relief quickly turned into anxiety as he stood at the altar, staring at the woman who was now his wife, at least on paper. Lily stood beside him, her face a mix of confusion and hesitation. The rushed ceremony had ended with nothing more than a signed marriage certificate and a shared look of uncertainty. Ethan had promised her everything she needed: money, a place to stay, a fresh start. But as they walked down the steps from the courthouse, reality began to set in. This was a temporary fix, a quick escape from an impending doom. But something about Lily made him question if this would truly be as simple as he thought. Lily, on the other hand, was still processing what had just happened. She had agreed to marry Ethan, not because she wanted a rich life, but because she needed to survive. The harsh winter had already drained her spirit, and this agreement gave her a glimpse of hope. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling of being out of place in this world of wealth and privilege. She had grown up with nothing, and despite Ethan's kind offer, she couldn't help but wonder if this was too good to be true. As they drove to Ethan's mansion, she felt the walls close in around her. The sprawling estate was nothing like the cramped apartments she had lived in over the years. It was beautiful, almost to the point of being overwhelming. The cold marble floors, the high ceilings, the expensive art hanging on the walls, it was all so unfamiliar to her. Ethan led her through the grand entrance, trying his best to make her feel comfortable, but Lily couldn't shake the unease that gnawed at her. She was in a place where she didn't belong, and despite Ethan's generosity, she couldn't let go of the suspicion that this was all a facade. "You must be hungry," Ethan said, breaking her thoughts. "I'll have the chef prepare something for you." Lily didn't respond immediately, instead looking around at the luxurious furnishings. It was a world so different from the one she knew, a world where money seemed to buy everything. As the days passed, Lily settled into her new life with Ethan. They shared awkward meals, silent moments in the grand living room, and the occasional small talk. Ethan was kind, but there was a distance between them, a wall that neither of them knew how to break down. For Ethan, the marriage was nothing more than a solution to his problems. He never expected to form a real connection with Lily, but there was something about her that made him rethink everything. She didn't care about his wealth. She didn't treat him like the powerful businessman that the world saw him as. She was different, and that difference made him start questioning his own priorities. However, Lily had no intention of getting emotionally involved. She kept her distance, reminding herself every day that this was just temporary. The money, the mansion, the fancy clothes, they meant nothing if she had to give up her own identity to fit into this new world. She had never dreamed of a life like this, and yet, here she was. Still, despite the distance, there were moments that caught her off guard. When Ethan showed her kindness, when he asked how she was doing, there was a flicker of something deeper. It was confusing to her, especially since she had no reason to believe that Ethan would be anything more than a man looking for a quick fix. But what if there was more to this arrangement than either of them realized? One evening, Ethan invited Lily to dinner at one of his favorite restaurants. It was a fancy affair, complete with candlelight and a live band. Lily hesitated when she walked into the restaurant. She had never been in a place like this before. The tables were covered with white linen, and the soft glow of the candles reflected in the fine china. But Ethan was already waiting at their table, a warm smile on his face. "You look beautiful," he said, standing up as she approached. Lily felt a flush rise to her cheeks. She had never heard Ethan say anything like that before, and the sincerity in his voice caught her off guard. As the night went on, they spoke more freely. Ethan asked about her life, her dreams, and for the first time since their marriage, Lily felt as if she was being seen for who she truly was. The evening ended with them walking back to the mansion, the air cool and crisp against their skin. There was an awkward silence between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. They both felt something shifting, something neither of them had expected. The next few days brought unexpected challenges. Ethan's family, who had not yet accepted Lily, began to make their disapproval known. His mother, in particular, was insistent that Lily wasn't good enough for him. "You're playing a dangerous game, Ethan," she warned one afternoon. "You don't want to be stuck with someone like her." Ethan, frustrated by his family's interference, found himself standing up for Lily more than he ever thought he would. The more he defended her, the more he realized how much he had begun to care. Lily, on the other hand, was battling her own feelings. The more she got to know Ethan, the more she felt herself torn between staying true to her original purpose and allowing herself to connect with him. She had always been independent, never relying on anyone for anything. But with Ethan, it felt different. There was something about him that made her question everything. One afternoon, while Ethan was in a meeting, Lily found herself alone in the mansion, wandering through the halls. She stumbled across a room that had been locked since her arrival. Curiosity getting the best of her, she quietly turned the handle and stepped inside. The room was filled with pictures of Ethan and his family, his younger years, and moments from his past. In the corner of the room, There was a photo of Ethan with another woman, someone who seemed to have been important to him. Lily's heart sank as she looked at the picture. Was Ethan still holding on to someone from his past? The realization hit her hard. Was she just a placeholder in his life, a temporary fix until he found what he truly wanted? This discovery only fueled her doubts and fears. She didn't want to be the second choice. She didn't want to be the one who was left behind once Ethan's family accepted him back into their fold. But what if it wasn't about that at all? What if Ethan was beginning to care for her in a way that was more than just a convenient arrangement? She didn't know, but she couldn't ignore the growing connection between them. Neither of them was prepared for what would come next. I apologize for the confusion earlier, but here's the third part of your requested content, written according to the specified instructions. As the days passed, the tension between Ethan and Lily began to grow. Ethan had never imagined that this arrangement would evolve into something more complicated than just a temporary solution. He had convinced himself that his feelings for Lily were based on guilt, not attraction, but the more time they spent together, the harder it was to deny the pull between them. Lily, too, found herself questioning the boundaries she had set for herself. She had come into this marriage with one purpose: to escape her harsh reality. But now, she was beginning to see Ethan in a different light. His kindness, his vulnerability, even his struggle with his family, all of it tugged at her heart. One evening, as they sat together in the living room, the silence between them was heavier than usual. Ethan couldn't ignore the growing frustration he felt. His life had been dictated by expectations, by the constant pressure to succeed, to marry someone who fit into his world. And now, with Lily, he realized he had been living in a shell, unable to truly experience life on his terms. But he wasn't ready to admit that to her yet. Lily, for her part, had always kept her distance, reminding herself of her original agreement. She had promised herself she wouldn't fall for Ethan, that this was just a temporary arrangement. But as she watched him now, looking at her with a mixture of concern and something deeper, her resolve started to falter. "Ethan," she said quietly, breaking the silence. "Why did you really ask me to marry you?" Ethan's eyes flickered with surprise. "I told you," he replied, trying to maintain his composure. "It's the only way to get my family off my back." But as the words left his mouth, he knew they didn't ring true. He had started to care for her in ways he hadn't planned. "That's all," Lily pressed. "You didn't feel something more?" Ethan hesitated, his gaze shifting away from hers. He didn't want to admit it, but the truth was undeniable. "I don't know," he finally said, his voice low. "But there's something about you, Lily. Something that's different from everything I've known." Lily felt a lump form in her throat. This wasn't what she had signed up for. She had expected a cold, detached arrangement, but instead, she had found herself on the edge of something real. She wanted to pull away, to protect herself from the emotions swirling inside her, but she couldn't. Not with him looking at her like that. The next few days were filled with subtle shifts in their dynamic. Ethan began to open up to Lily in ways he never had before. He shared stories about his childhood, his dreams, and his struggles with his family. Lily listened, her heart softening with each passing moment. She had always been taught to rely on herself, to keep her guard up, but with Ethan, it was different. She found herself caring for him, despite herself. One afternoon, as they walked through the garden together, Ethan stopped and turned to her. "Lily," he said, his voice earnest, "I know this was supposed to be temporary, but I can't pretend anymore. I don't want this to end when my family gets off my back. I want to be with you. For real." Lily's breath caught in her throat. She had known, deep down, that this moment would come. But hearing him say it out loud made her heart race in a way she hadn't expected. "Ethan, I don't know if I can," she started, her voice shaky. "I don't know if I'm ready to trust someone again." Ethan stepped closer, his expression softening. "You don't have to be ready. You just have to trust me. I'm not asking you to forget everything that's happened, or to give up your independence. But I want a chance to prove that us, could be real." Lily looked at him, uncertainty clouding her thoughts. But the way he spoke, the sincerity in his eyes, made it hard to ignore the feelings that were slowly growing between them. "I don't know if I can," she whispered again, her heart torn. Ethan reached out and gently took her hand, his touch warm and reassuring. "You don't have to decide right now," he said, his voice steady. "But just know that I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere." The days that followed were a whirlwind of emotions. Lily continued to wrestle with her feelings for Ethan, but she couldn't deny that he was slowly breaking down the walls she had spent years building. For the first time in a long while, she felt seen, valued, and, dare she admit it, loved. But even as their relationship deepened, outside forces began to intrude. Ethan's family, still skeptical of Lily's intentions, started to put pressure on him to end the charade. His mother, especially, made it clear that she didn't approve of Lily, and she would do whatever it took to break them apart. One evening, as Ethan and Lily sat together in the living room, his phone rang. It was his mother. Ethan's face hardened as he answered. "Mother, I told you, this marriage is my decision." His mother's voice came through the phone, sharp and disapproving. "You're making a mistake, Ethan. She's not the one. You know what's best for the family." Ethan clenched his jaw, frustration mounting. "I don't care what you think. I'm not letting you dictate my life anymore." He hung up the phone, his anger simmering beneath the surface. Lily watched him, her heart aching at the sight of his internal struggle. "You don't have to fight them for me," she said softly. Ethan turned to her, his expression filled with a mixture of determination and vulnerability. "I'm not fighting them for you," he said, his voice firm. "I'm fighting for us. I apologize for the earlier confusion. Here's the fourth part of your requested content, written according to the specified instructions." The weeks following Ethan's stand against his family were filled with both tension and tenderness. Ethan and Lily's connection grew stronger, but so did the pressure from his family. His mother's disapproval became a constant shadow over their lives. She had never hidden her disdain for Lily, and now, with Ethan becoming more defiant, she stepped up her efforts to break them apart. "You're making a fool of yourself, Ethan," his mother had said one afternoon. "This marriage will destroy you, and you'll regret it." Ethan, however, was resolute. He had never felt so sure of something in his life. Lily had become more than just a temporary solution, more than a convenient escape. She had become someone he couldn't imagine his life without. Lily, for her part, was still hesitant. Her heart was torn between the growing feelings for Ethan and the fear that this whole arrangement would collapse around her. She had always kept her guard up, but Ethan's unwavering support had begun to chip away at the walls she had built over the years. "I don't know if I can trust you completely," she confessed one night as they sat in the living room, the fire crackling in the background. Ethan looked at her, his eyes full of sincerity. "I'm not asking for you to trust me all at once, Lily," he said softly. "I'm asking for a chance. We can take this one step at a time, but I'm not going anywhere." The vulnerability in his voice made her heart ache. She had never imagined herself in a situation like this. A millionaire, a man with so much power, asking for a chance to build something real. But with Ethan, there was something different. He didn't want her for her status or her looks. He wanted her, simply for who she was. And that realization was a turning point for Lily. She had never known such kindness from anyone, let alone from someone like Ethan. The days that followed were filled with moments of quiet connection. They would take walks in the garden, share meals together, and talk about things they never thought they would discuss with anyone. Ethan revealed more about his childhood, the loneliness he often felt, the pressure of being the heir to his family's fortune. Lily listened, really listened, and for the first time, Ethan felt understood. For the first time, he didn't feel like he was just the rich CEO. Lily, on the other hand, found herself opening up about her own struggles, about the years spent living on the streets, trying to survive. She talked about the things she had lost, her family, her dreams, and the hope she had nearly given up on. Ethan's heart broke as he listened to her. He had always taken his privileged life for granted, but Lily had taught him to appreciate the little things, the things he had never even noticed before. It was during one of these quiet moments that Lily's past came crashing back into their lives. She had tried to keep her history buried, to leave behind the memories of the harsh world she had known. But one evening, while Ethan was away on business, she received a call from a man she never thought she'd hear from again. "Lily," the voice on the other end said, "you need to come home. Things are getting bad." It was her brother. The news he brought was unsettling. The shelter where she had been living before her marriage was closing down due to a lack of funding. The people she had come to think of as family were being forced back onto the streets. It was a harsh reminder of the world she had left behind. Ethan, upon hearing the news, immediately offered to help. "We can do something," he said, his voice firm. "I'll make some calls, get the funding you need. But Lily refused. She couldn't let Ethan solve all of her problems. She had spent so many years relying on herself, and asking for help from anyone, even Ethan, felt like a betrayal. I appreciate it, Ethan, she said quietly. But this is something I need to do on my own. I fought my whole life to survive, and I'm not about to give up now. Ethan didn't push her, but the tension between them grew. Lily began spending more time outside the mansion, meeting with old friends, and working on a plan to help the shelter. As the days passed, she found herself falling back into old habits, doing things on her own, keeping her emotions buried deep inside. She had never been able to rely on anyone before, and now, with Ethan, it was proving to be even harder than she imagined. Ethan watched her withdraw, and it broke his heart. He had promised to be there for her, to be her partner in this, but she was shutting him out. One afternoon, after a particularly long day of meetings, Ethan came home to find Lily in the garden, staring at the flowers with a faraway look in her eyes. He approached her slowly, unsure of what to say. "Lily," he called softly. She turned to face him, her eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and determination. "I can't do this, Ethan," she whispered. "I can't keep relying on you. I don't want to be a charity case, and I don't want you to feel obligated to help me." Ethan's heart sank as he stepped closer to her. "Lily, this isn't about charity," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "This is about us, about being there for each other. You don't have to carry everything on your own anymore. Let me help you, not because I have to, but because I want to." For the first time, Lily let her guard down completely. Tears filled her eyes as she took a step toward Ethan. "I don't know how to let someone in," she admitted, her voice trembling. "I've spent so many years alone, I don't know how to ask for help." Ethan reached out and pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly. "You don't have to know how," he whispered. "I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere." In that moment, Lily realized something she had never allowed herself to believe before. She wasn't alone anymore. Ethan wasn't just her escape from the past. He was her future. And for the first time in a long while, she felt like she could finally breathe. The world around them may have been filled with obstacles, but together, they would face whatever came next. I apologize for the earlier confusion. Here's the fifth part of your requested content, written according to the specified instructions. The days following Ethan's heart-to-heart with Lily marked a turning point in their marriage. For the first time, they both began to truly understand each other, not just as two people bound by a contract, but as individuals with their own fears, desires, and dreams. Their growing bond felt undeniable, though the pressure from the outside world continued to loom over them. Despite their quiet moments of connection, Ethan's family remained a constant source of tension. His mother, still disapproving of Lily, made it clear that this marriage was unacceptable. "You cannot keep living this fantasy, Ethan," she had said during another phone call, her voice cold and calculated. "You need to end it before it goes any further." Ethan, however, had made his decision. He wasn't going to let anyone dictate his life any longer, not even his family. Still, the constant conflict with his parents weighed on him, especially as they continued to escalate their disapproval, using guilt and manipulation to force him to reconsider his choice. But no matter what they said, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that he had made the right choice in marrying Lily. She had given him something he hadn't even realized he was missing: authenticity. With her, he didn't have to pretend to be someone he wasn't. Lily, in return, had also begun to open up more about her past, her fears, and her struggles. The wall she had spent years building came down bit by bit. She still didn't fully trust that her new life with Ethan was permanent, but with every moment she shared with him, that trust grew. One night, as they sat together after dinner, a sudden knock on the door interrupted their peaceful moment. Ethan frowned, wondering who could be visiting so late. He stood and opened the door to find his mother standing on the other side. "Ethan," she began, her tone sharp, "we need to talk." Lily stood up, her heart racing, but Ethan put a hand on her arm, giving her a reassuring look. He knew this moment was coming, but he wasn't going to back down now. "Not tonight, Mom," Ethan said, his voice firm. "I'm done with these conversations." "You can't be serious," she replied, stepping into the foyer with an air of entitlement. "I can't sit idly by and watch you destroy your future with a woman like her." Lily could feel the tension rising in the air. She had heard the whispers from Ethan's family, seen the judgment in their eyes, but hearing it directly from his mother made her stomach turn. "I don't need your approval," Ethan said, stepping in front of his mother. "This is my life, and I'm choosing to live it on my own terms." His mother's expression hardened. "If you go through with this, you will lose everything," she warned, her voice cold. "Your inheritance, your company, your legacy. All of it." Ethan's jaw tightened, but he didn't back down. "Then I guess I'm willing to lose it," he said quietly. The silence between them was thick, but it wasn't uncomfortable. Ethan and his mother stared at each other for a long moment before she finally spoke again. "You'll regret this, Ethan," she said with a final, bitter tone before turning and walking out. As the door shut behind her, Ethan exhaled, his shoulders slumping with the weight of what he had just done. He looked over at Lily, who was standing by the couch, her face a mixture of disbelief and concern. "I meant what I said," Ethan added softly. "This is my choice, and I choose you." Lily walked over to him, her heart swelling at his words. She had never imagined that someone would stand up for her in the way Ethan just had. He wasn't just choosing her because of obligation or convenience. He was choosing her because he wanted to. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "You don't have to thank me," Ethan replied, pulling her into a gentle embrace. "I want this. I want you." The days following his confrontation with his mother were quieter, but the tension was still palpable. Ethan knew that his family wouldn't let go of their expectations so easily. The thought of losing everything, his inheritance, his company, the life he had known, still lingered in the back of his mind. But he couldn't let that fear dictate his future. He had already made the hardest choice he'd ever make. Now, he had to live with it. As for Lily, the weight of his words continued to linger in her heart. She had always feared being abandoned, left behind once the novelty of their arrangement wore off. But in Ethan's arms, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, this could be real. The two of them spent more time together, slowly discovering more about each other's worlds. Ethan took her to the office one afternoon, showing her the business he had built, explaining the challenges and triumphs of running a multi-million-dollar company. Lily was impressed, though she didn't completely understand the corporate world. Still, it was fascinating to see a side of Ethan that no one else had ever seen, a side that was raw and vulnerable, struggling to make things work. In turn, Lily shared more about her past, her days spent in the shelter, how she had fought to survive and build a better life for herself. Ethan listened intently, his respect for her growing with every word she spoke. The more he learned about her strength and resilience, the more he realized how little he truly knew about the people around him. Lily had survived things he couldn't even imagine, and yet here she was, standing by his side. Their bond deepened with every passing day, and they both began to realize that this wasn't just a marriage of convenience. It was something more. But just as things began to feel more settled, the storm that had been brewing finally broke. Ethan's father, fed up with his defiance, made an ultimatum. "End this farce, or you'll lose everything. Your company, your legacy, your future." Ethan, with Lily by his side, stood firm. "I won't be controlled anymore. This is who I am, and this is who I choose to be with." His father's glare was icy, but Ethan stood unshaken, knowing that the life he had once known was no longer his. And for the first time, Ethan felt free. "I apologize for the earlier confusion. Here is the 6th part of your requested content, written according to the specified instructions." As the weeks went by, the pressure on Ethan and Lily continued to rise. Ethan had made his stand against his family, but the consequences were not as easy to ignore as he had hoped. His father, in particular, remained determined to break them apart. He called Ethan into a private meeting at the family estate, the same grand home where Ethan had grown up. The walls, lined with expensive art and family portraits, seemed to close in on him as his father's voice echoed through the room. "You've made your choice," his father said, his tone icy. "But you must understand, Ethan, this is not just about you. The future of this company, our family legacy, it all depends on you making the right decisions. And this woman you've married is not the answer." Ethan stood tall, his jaw clenched in determination. "I don't need your approval," he said, his voice steady. "This is about my happiness, not the company or the legacy. You've had your chance to make decisions for me. Now it's my turn." His father's face twisted with anger. "You are throwing everything away," he spat. "This is a mistake you'll regret." But Ethan, for the first time in his life, didn't flinch. "I'm not backing down," he said, his voice unwavering. "This is what I want." Outside, the world continued to spin, indifferent to the battles raging within the walls of the mansion. But for Ethan and Lily, life was changing in ways they never anticipated. Despite the pressure from his family, Ethan found a new sense of freedom in his decision. He no longer felt like he was living for someone else's expectations. He was living for himself, and for Lily. The nights they spent together, talking about everything and nothing, became the highlights of his days. He learned more about her past, the struggles she had faced, and the strength it had taken for her to get where she was. He admired her resilience, and as their connection deepened, he found himself more and more convinced that this was the life he wanted. Lily, too, was beginning to feel a sense of stability she had never known. She had spent so many years fighting for survival, never allowing herself to fully trust anyone. But with Ethan, something had changed. She found herself relying on him, something she thought she would never do. The vulnerability between them created an intimacy that neither of them had expected. And yet, despite their growing feelings for each other, Lily was still haunted by the fear that it wouldn't last. She had spent her life being let down, and the idea that Ethan might leave her once his family accepted him was a constant source of anxiety. One evening, as they sat on the porch, watching the sunset, Lily's thoughts took a darker turn. "Ethan," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "What if this is just temporary for you? What if, when everything settles down, you decide this wasn't worth it?" Ethan turned to her, his face filled with concern. "What are you talking about?" he asked gently. "I'm not going anywhere, Lily. I'm here with you, and I want to build something real. I know it's been hard, but I'm not going to just walk away." Lily's eyes searched his face, looking for any signs of doubt, but all she saw was sincerity. She wanted to believe him, but the fear that had been a part of her for so long was hard to shake. "I don't want to be abandoned," she whispered, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. "I can't go through that again." Ethan reached out and took her hand in his, squeezing it gently. "You're not alone," he said softly. "I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere." In that moment, Lily felt something shift inside her. It wasn't just the words, but the way Ethan said them. There was no hesitation, no doubt. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, this was real. But even as they grew closer, new challenges arose. Ethan's company, which had always been a point of pride for him, was now facing financial trouble. The pressure from his family to conform, to marry a woman who could solidify his place in the business world, was only intensifying. Ethan's position as the head of the company was at risk, and with it, his financial stability. The stress began to wear on him, and Lily could see the toll it was taking. He had always been so strong, so confident, but now, he was starting to crumble under the weight of it all. One night, after a particularly difficult meeting with his board of directors, Ethan came home late, his face drawn and tired. Lily was already in bed, but when she heard the door open, she sat up. "Ethan," she called softly. He walked into the room, rubbing his eyes. "Hey," he said, his voice rough. "I'm sorry I'm so late. Things with the company. It's a lot right now." Lily watched him, her heart aching. "What's going on? You look like you haven't slept in days." Ethan sighed, sitting on the edge of the bed. "The company's in trouble. My father's trying to take control. They're all pushing me to make decisions that I don't agree with. It's a lot, Lily." Lily's heart went out to him. She had always known that Ethan's life was complicated, but hearing the pain in his voice made her realize just how much he was carrying. She reached over and took his hand. "You don't have to do this alone, Ethan," she said quietly. "I'm here, and I'll help you through this." Ethan turned to her, his eyes filled with exhaustion and gratitude. "I don't deserve you," he whispered. "You've been so strong for me. I don't know how to get through this." Lily smiled softly, her heart full of love for him. "You don't have to do it all on your own," she said. "We're in this together, okay?" Ethan nodded, and for the first time in a long while, he felt like he could breathe again. He wasn't alone, and neither was she. As the days passed, they continued to face the challenges that came with their marriage. Ethan's family, the financial troubles, the uncertainty about the future. But one thing was clear, they were stronger together. And no matter what came their way, they would face it side by side. I apologize for the earlier confusion. Here is the 7th part of your requested content, written according to the specified instructions. As the weeks went by, Ethan and Lily's relationship began to settle into a new rhythm. The challenges they had faced together, Ethan's strained relationship with his family, the pressures of running a multi-million-dollar company, and Lily's past that constantly seemed to follow her, were not over, but they were no longer insurmountable. Each day, they worked together to strengthen their bond, to face the world as a team. Ethan, though still under pressure from his family and the mounting stress at the company, found peace in the quiet moments with Lily. When she was near, everything else seemed to fade away. She had become his anchor, his reminder that there was more to life than business deals and family expectations. It was during one of these peaceful moments that the unexpected happened. Ethan was sitting at his desk in the home office, reviewing some financial reports when Lily entered the room, a hesitant look on her face. "Ethan, we need to talk," she said softly. Ethan looked up, sensing the seriousness in her tone. "What's wrong?" he asked, setting aside the papers. Lily hesitated before speaking. "I've been thinking a lot about the future, about what comes next for us." Ethan felt a knot form in his stomach. Was she questioning their relationship? Was she finally seeing the cracks that he had been so determined to ignore? He stood and walked toward her, his heart racing. "Lily, whatever it is, we'll figure it out. I'm here, okay?" Lily nodded, but the uncertainty was still there in her eyes. "It's not that, Ethan," she said. "It's just, I feel like I'm still living in the shadows of my past. I've come so far, but sometimes I wonder if I'm really living the life I want." Ethan listened carefully, trying to understand what she was saying. "What do you mean?" he asked gently. Lily took a deep breath, gathering her thoughts. "When I married you, it was supposed to be a fresh start. I was supposed to leave behind everything that held me back, everything that reminded me of who I used to be. But sometimes, I feel like I'm still trapped in that old life, just wearing a new mask." Ethan stepped closer, his hand gently resting on her shoulder. "I get it," he said softly. "You've been through so much, and it's not easy to let go of the past. But I'm here, Lily. You don't have to do it alone anymore. You've already come so far." Lily looked up at him, the sincerity in his eyes making her heart ache. She wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that this was real, that this new life they were building together could be hers. "I know," she whispered, "but I need to know that I can be more than just the woman who married you. I need to find myself again, outside of all this." Ethan's heart swelled with admiration for her. He had always known that Lily was strong, but hearing her admit her struggle made him realize just how far she had come. "Lily," he said softly, "you are more than that. You are everything, and I want to help you find that, however long it takes." Lily's eyes filled with tears, but she smiled softly. "I don't want to lose this. I don't want to lose you." Ethan wiped away a tear that had escaped down her cheek, his voice full of emotion. "You won't lose me, Lily. I'm not going anywhere. We're in this together." That night, after their conversation, they sat together in silence, both of them reflecting on the paths that had led them here. For the first time in a long time, Lily allowed herself to fully feel the weight of everything she had overcome. She had spent so many years running from her past, but now, with Ethan by her side, she felt ready to face it. The next morning, Ethan surprised her with an idea. "I've been thinking," he said as they sat at the breakfast table. "What if we take some time off? A getaway. Just the two of us. No business, no family drama. Just us." Lily looked at him, a spark of excitement in her eyes. "Where would we go?" she asked, the thought of a fresh start, even if just for a little while, sounding incredibly appealing. Ethan grinned. "How about somewhere you've always wanted to go? Let's make it an adventure. You can choose." Lily thought for a moment, then smiled. "How about the coast? I've always wanted to see the ocean." Ethan's heart swelled at the thought of doing something so simple but meaningful. "The coast it is," he said, taking her hand. "We'll go wherever you want." And so, they planned their escape, an opportunity to get away from the pressures that had followed them for so long. For Lily, it wasn't just about a vacation. It was a chance to reconnect with herself, to remind herself that she was more than the life she had left behind. For Ethan, it was an opportunity to fully let go of the expectations that had defined his life for so long. As they packed their bags and made their way to the airport, neither of them could have known what awaited them on this journey. They were about to embark on an adventure that would change the course of their lives in ways they hadn't yet imagined. The future was still uncertain, but for the first time, they were both ready to face it together as equals. Their love had grown stronger, their bond unbreakable. And with each passing day, they both realized that the life they had built together was worth fighting for. The road ahead was not without its challenges, but they had each other, and that was enough. I apologize for the earlier confusion. Here is the 8th part of your requested content, written according to the specified instructions. Their getaway to the coast was everything they had hoped for, and more. As they arrived at the beach town, the cool sea breeze and the sound of waves crashing against the shore instantly began to relax them both. It was a world away from the stresses of their everyday lives, and for the first time in what felt like forever, both Ethan and Lily felt like they could truly breathe. They spent their days walking along the beach, talking about their dreams, their fears, and their pasts. Lily found herself opening up in ways she never thought possible. She shared more about her childhood, how she had grown up in a small town, how she had always dreamed of a life different from the one she had been dealt. Ethan, in turn, told her more about his upbringing, his complicated relationship with his family, and the pressure that had always been on him to succeed. They explored the quaint town together, stopping at little cafes and markets. They laughed over simple things. Ethan trying to learn how to make sandcastles, Lily finding the most beautiful seashells, and both of them realizing that they hadn't truly stopped to enjoy life in a long time. As the days passed, they felt more connected than ever, and the pressures that had been weighing them down seemed to fade into the background. They were just two people, enjoying each other's company, without the burden of expectations or family obligations. One evening, after a long day spent on the beach, they sat on the porch of their little rental house, watching the sunset. The sky was painted with shades of pink and orange, and the ocean stretched out before them, its vastness both humbling and calming. Ethan turned to Lily, his eyes soft. "I never thought I could feel this way," he said quietly. Lily looked at him, unsure of what he meant. "What do you mean?" she asked. Ethan paused, choosing his words carefully. "I never thought I could feel this free. I spent so many years trying to live up to what everyone else expected of me, my family, my company, the world. And now, with you, I feel like I can finally just be myself." Lily's heart swelled as she listened. She had always known Ethan was more than the image his family or the world saw. But hearing him say it out loud was a different experience altogether. "You are yourself," she said softly, reaching out to touch his hand. "And I'm glad I'm here with you, Ethan. I'm glad we're doing this together." Ethan smiled, his fingers gently brushing hers. "You don't know how much that means to me." For the first time in their lives, both of them felt like they were living for themselves, not for anyone else, not for any legacy or expectation. They were free to be whoever they wanted to be, and that was the greatest gift they could give each other. But as much as the getaway had been a time of healing, reality was always lurking just beneath the surface. The pressures of Ethan's business were never far from his mind, and despite the peace they had found in the quiet town, there were still moments of doubt. One evening, after they had returned from a sunset walk, Ethan received a call from his lawyer. His stomach sank as he answered, already bracing for bad news. "Ethan," the lawyer's voice was grave, "we've received word from your father's legal team. They're preparing to challenge your decision, to take control of the company. They're pushing hard, and they have the leverage they need." Ethan's heart raced. "What does this mean?" "It means the fight isn't over," the lawyer replied. "Your family is determined to take this from you, and they won't stop until they do." Ethan felt the weight of the world pressing down on him once again. Despite the time they had spent away, despite the peace he had found with Lily, the battle with his family was far from over. He ran a hand through his hair, trying to make sense of it all. "What are my options? You can continue to fight, but you may have to give up something. You'll need to make a choice." Ethan let out a deep breath. The choice had always been there, but now it felt like it was looming over him with more intensity than ever before. "I need to think about this," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I need some time." The call ended, and Ethan stood there for a moment, staring out at the ocean. He could feel the weight of the decision bearing down on him. The life he had built, the future he had dreamed of, it was all on the line. Lily, sensing the shift in his mood, walked over to him. "Ethan," she asked softly, "what happened?" Ethan turned to her, his eyes filled with a mixture of frustration and uncertainty. "It's my family," he said, his voice heavy. "They're not letting go. They want control of the company, and they're willing to do whatever it takes to take it from me." Lily's heart sank. She had seen the toll the fight with his family had taken on Ethan, and now it seemed like it was about to get worse. She placed a hand on his arm, trying to offer him comfort. "You don't have to do this alone, Ethan. Whatever you decide, I'm with you." Ethan looked at her, the weight of his decision still pressing on him. But for the first time, he realized something. He wasn't alone anymore. No matter what his family did, no matter what challenges lay ahead, he had Lily by his side. And that made all the difference. As they stood together, watching the waves crash on the shore, Ethan knew that he had already made his decision. No matter what the future held, he would fight for what he believed in, and for the life he wanted with Lily. I apologize for the earlier confusion. Here is the 9th part of your requested content, written according to the specified instructions. The days following Ethan's decision to fight for his company were filled with a mix of determination and uncertainty. The pressure had never been so high. His family's legal team was relentless, pushing harder than ever to gain control of the company. Ethan found himself in endless meetings with his lawyers, trying to figure out how to keep his business and his future intact. Despite all of this, he couldn't shake the feeling that his life was slipping out of his hands. But amidst the stress, Lily remained his rock. She stood by him through it all, offering him the support and reassurance he needed to keep going. He had always been the one who had to handle everything on his own, but with Lily by his side, he realized how much strength there was in sharing the burden. It was a late evening when Ethan came home from yet another stressful meeting. He could feel the weight of the world on his shoulders as he entered the house. The familiar surroundings of their home did little to ease the tension in his body. But then he saw Lily, sitting by the window with a soft smile on her face, reading a book. For a moment, the chaos of the world outside seemed to disappear. She looked up when she heard him enter and immediately noticed the exhaustion in his eyes. "Long day?" she asked, her voice gentle. Ethan didn't answer right away. He stood in the doorway for a moment, his mind racing with thoughts of the legal battle and the fight with his family. Finally, he walked over to her and sank into the chair beside her. "I don't know how much longer I can keep this up," he confessed, his voice thick with frustration. "Every day feels like a new battle, and I don't know if I'm winning or losing." Lily placed the book down and reached for his hand, her touch warm and steady. "You're not alone in this," she said softly. "I'm here, Ethan, and we'll figure this out, together." His heart swelled as he looked at her. For the first time in what felt like forever, he allowed himself to lean on someone else. He had been so focused on the business and the expectations of his family that he had forgotten how much he had with Lily. "I don't deserve you," he whispered. Lily shook her head, her eyes full of understanding. "You don't have to be perfect, Ethan. I'm here because I believe in you, not because of what you have or what you've built. I'm here because of who you are." The words hit Ethan harder than he expected. He had spent so much of his life trying to live up to the expectations of others that he had almost forgotten what it meant to be loved for who he truly was. Lily's love wasn't tied to his wealth or his family's legacy. It was something pure, something he had never expected to find. The following days were still filled with tension. Ethan's family refused to back down, and the legal battle raged on. But there was a noticeable change in Ethan's demeanor. With Lily by his side, he found the strength to keep pushing forward. He no longer felt as though he was fighting alone. The connection they had deepened, and their relationship grew stronger with each passing day. But just when it seemed like they might be turning a corner, disaster struck. One morning, Ethan received a call from his lawyer, his voice grim. "Ethan, it's not good. Your father has filed a motion to have the company placed under a conservatorship, effectively taking control away from you. If this goes through, you'll lose everything." Ethan felt his heart drop. His worst fear was coming true. The company, his legacy, everything he had worked for, was now at risk. He hung up the phone, his mind racing with panic. He had no idea how to fight this, how to save everything he had worked for. He could feel the walls closing in around him. Lily, sensing his distress, immediately came to his side. "What happened?" she asked, her voice laced with concern. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, his face pale. "They're going to take it from me. Everything I've built, it's slipping away. I can't lose this, Lily. I can't." Lily took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. She had seen Ethan go through so much, but this felt different. The stakes were higher now. But as she looked at him, she saw something in his eyes, a determination that hadn't been there before. "Ethan," she said softly, her voice steady. "We're going to fight. We're going to do everything we can to keep this. But no matter what happens, we'll do it together." Ethan looked at her, his chest tightening with emotion. "I don't know if I can do this without you," he admitted. "You've already given me everything I need. Strength, love, and support. I can't lose that." Lily squeezed his hand, her gaze unwavering. "You won't lose me, Ethan. No matter what happens, I'm not going anywhere. We'll fight for your future, and we'll do it together." Ethan nodded, feeling a sense of calm wash over him. He wasn't alone. Not anymore. The battle ahead would be hard, and the stakes were higher than ever, but for the first time, he felt ready to face it. He had Lily by his side, and that was all that mattered. With renewed determination, Ethan and Lily began to prepare for the fight of their lives. The legal battle would be long, but they were in it together. And no matter what the future held, they knew they had each other. As they stood side by side, ready to face the storm, they realized that, no matter what they lost, they would never lose their love for each other. I apologize for the earlier confusion. Here is the 10th part of your requested content, written according to the specified instructions. The days following the news of the conservatorship motion were filled with uncertainty and tension. Ethan and Lily threw themselves into preparing for the legal battle, determined to hold on to everything that mattered most to them. The fight was consuming Ethan in ways he hadn't anticipated. Each day brought new challenges, endless meetings with lawyers, strategic decisions to make, and the constant pressure from his family to surrender control of the company. Yet through it all, Lily remained his constant support, never once wavering in her belief in him. They spent hours strategizing, poring over documents, and seeking every possible angle to fight back against the motion. It wasn't just about the company anymore. It was about their future together. For the first time, Ethan felt the weight of what he had been fighting for. The company, his family's legacy, had been his life for so long, but now, with Lily at his side, he began to see things differently. She had shown him what it truly meant to live, what it meant to be present, to care for someone beyond the material things in life. She had given him the courage to pursue a life that wasn't bound by expectations. Lily had her own fears as well. She had never expected to be part of such a high-stakes battle, yet here she was, fighting alongside Ethan. She had come from a past that was filled with hardship and struggle, and though she had made peace with much of it, the idea of being involved in a corporate battle left her uneasy. But as she stood next to Ethan in those quiet moments, she realized just how far she had come. She had never believed in fate or destiny, but now, with Ethan, she felt like they were part of something bigger. The trial date approached quickly, and the tension in the air grew thick. The courtroom was a battleground, with Ethan and his team of lawyers fighting tooth and nail to prove that he was capable of running the company. His father's legal team, however, was just as determined to take control, making every effort to discredit Ethan and his ability to lead. It was a fight that felt endless, with no clear end in sight. On the day of the trial, Ethan and Lily sat in the courtroom, the weight of the moment pressing down on them. Ethan's nerves were barely contained, but he knew one thing for sure. He couldn't do this without Lily. She had been there for him every step of the way, and now, more than ever, she was the strength he needed. The courtroom was a place of tension, with the opposing lawyers throwing accusations and trying to break Ethan's resolve. His father sat in the front row, his cold eyes never leaving him, watching every move Ethan made. Lily could feel the weight of the situation. It was clear that this battle was about more than just a company. It was about proving that Ethan could stand on his own, that he could live life on his own terms. As the day wore on, Ethan took the stand, his heart pounding in his chest. He looked out at the room, his eyes locking with Lily's for a brief moment. That small gesture gave him the strength to keep going. He spoke about his vision for the company, about the work he had put in, and most importantly, about the future he wanted to build, a future where he could be himself, free from the constraints of his family's expectations. The opposing lawyer questioned him relentlessly, trying to undermine his every word. But Ethan stood firm, his voice steady as he spoke about his commitment to the company and the values he held dear. In the end, It was Lily's quiet support that kept him grounded. She had always believed in him, even when he couldn't believe in himself. As the trial came to a close, both sides made their final arguments, and the courtroom fell silent. The judge deliberated, and for what felt like an eternity, Ethan and Lily waited, their hands tightly clasped together. Finally, the judge returned to the bench, and the room went still. After reviewing all the evidence presented, the judge said, his voice echoing through the courtroom, "It is my decision that Ethan Carter will retain control of the company. The motion for conservatorship is denied." The words hung in the air, and for a moment, neither Ethan nor Lily could move. It was over. They had won. Ethan's father, his face a mixture of anger and disbelief, stood up and walked out without a word. For the first time, Ethan felt like he was free. The weight that had been on his shoulders for so long seemed to lift, and a sense of relief flooded over him. He turned to Lily, his heart racing. "We did it," he whispered, barely able to believe it. Lily smiled, her eyes bright with tears. "We did it," she echoed, squeezing his hand. In that moment, everything changed. They had fought for their future, for the life they wanted to build together, and they had won. As they walked out of the courtroom hand in hand, the world seemed a little brighter. Ethan knew that this was only the beginning. The future still held its challenges, but he no longer felt like he had to face them alone. With Lily by his side, he was ready for whatever came next. Together, they had built a life founded on love, trust, and the belief that they could overcome anything, no matter the odds. I apologize for the earlier confusion. Here is the 11th part of your requested content, written according to the specified instructions. The days after the trial passed in a blur of relief and anticipation. The battle with Ethan's family was finally over, and he had won the right to keep control of the company. But more importantly, he had fought for the future he wanted with Lily. There was still so much to navigate. His relationship with his parents was far from healed, and the pressure of running a business still loomed large. But in the quiet moments with Lily, he felt at peace. For the first time, he truly understood what it meant to have someone by his side. Lily, too, had felt the weight of the past few months lifting. The legal battles, the tension with Ethan's family, and the constant uncertainty had taken their toll on both of them. But now, as they stood together, side by side, it felt like they had finally reached a turning point. They could begin to imagine a future without the shadows of their past hanging over them. Still, there was something lingering in the air. Lily could see the exhaustion in Ethan's eyes, despite the victory. The stress of the past few months had taken its toll on him, and she knew that he was still carrying the weight of his family's disapproval. The company was his legacy, his identity, and while winning the trial had secured his future, there was still a deep-seated fear that he might lose it all again. One evening, as they sat together in the living room, the silence between them was thick. Ethan was staring out the window, lost in thought. Lily watched him for a moment, then spoke softly. "Ethan, what's going on in your mind?" Ethan turned to her, his face filled with a mixture of exhaustion and worry. "I don't know," he replied quietly. I don't know how to move forward. We've won the battle, but the fight's not over. My family won't just accept this, and the company, it's a lot. I feel like I'm carrying the weight of everything." Lily's heart ached for him. She had seen him go through so much, and yet, she knew that he hadn't fully let go of the burden he had been carrying for years. "Ethan," she said softly, her voice gentle but firm. "You don't have to carry it all alone. You never have to. We've made it this far together, and we'll make it through whatever comes next, together." Ethan looked at her, his eyes filled with both gratitude and doubt. "I want to believe that, Lily. I really do. But I've always had to do everything myself. I don't know what it's like to truly share the load." Lily smiled softly, reaching out to take his hand. "You don't have to have all the answers right now. What matters is that we're in this together. Whatever happens with the company, with your family, we'll face it side by side." Ethan squeezed her hand, a small but genuine smile tugging at his lips. "I don't deserve you," he said quietly. "You've given me more than I could ever ask for." Lily shook her head. "No, Ethan, you don't have to deserve me. I'm here because I want to be, because I believe in us. I believe in you." The words hung in the air between them, and for the first time in a long while, Ethan felt like he could truly breathe. He didn't have to carry the weight of everything by himself. And with Lily, he didn't have to face the world alone. Over the next few weeks, They focused on what mattered most, their relationship. Ethan continued to manage the company, but he made a conscious effort to spend more time with Lily, to nurture their connection. He realized that the business, as important as it was, didn't define him. It was the love he shared with Lily, the future they were building together, that truly mattered. They took small steps together, planning for a future that was no longer filled with uncertainty. Ethan began to find a new sense of balance in his life. He didn't have to choose between his family, his legacy, and the woman he loved. With Lily by his side, he felt like he could create something new, something that was uniquely theirs. And Lily, for the first time, allowed herself to imagine a future where she wasn't just surviving, but thriving. She had found love, something she never thought she would experience, and with Ethan, she realized that she had found a partner who truly saw her for who she was, not just the person she had been. The path ahead was still uncertain, but the foundation they were building was stronger than anything they had ever known. Together, they had faced the most challenging period of their lives and come out stronger. They knew that there would be more hurdles to overcome, but as long as they had each other, they felt ready to face whatever the future held. One evening, as they sat on the porch, watching the sun set over the horizon, Ethan turned to Lily. "You know, I used to think that success was all about winning, about having control over everything. But now, I see that it's not about that at all." Lily raised an eyebrow, curious. "What do you mean?" she asked. Ethan smiled, his eyes softening as he looked at her. "Success, for me, is about finding peace. It's about having someone you can trust, someone who will stand by you no matter what. It's about building a life with someone you love." Lily's heart swelled at his words. She had never imagined that life could be this way, filled with love, trust, and hope for the future. "And that's what we have, Ethan. That's what we've built together." Ethan nodded, the weight on his shoulders feeling lighter than it had in years. "Yes, together." They sat in comfortable silence, the world around them peaceful, and for the first time in a long time, Ethan allowed himself to relax. The fight was over, but the journey had just begun. The future was wide open, and with Lily by his side, he knew that anything was possible. "I apologize for the earlier confusion. Here is the 12th part of your requested content, written according to the specified instructions." Months passed, and life slowly settled into a new rhythm for Ethan and Lily. The battle with his family was behind them, and though the scars of that fight would remain for some time, they were no longer defining their future. With the company secure and his personal life at peace, Ethan found himself focusing on what really mattered, the life he was building with Lily. As they moved forward, Ethan and Lily decided to take their relationship to the next level. They began talking about the future in ways they hadn't before. They discussed everything from where they wanted to live to the kind of family they might want to build. For Lily, it was a chance to envision a life she had never dared to imagine. Growing up, she had always dreamed of finding a place where she truly belonged, a life full of love and stability. Now, with Ethan, that dream was becoming a reality. She had never expected to find love the way she had with him. And as they shared their hopes and fears for the future, Lily realized that she had everything she needed to create the life she had always wanted. For Ethan, the thought of building a family with Lily filled him with a sense of purpose. He had spent years living under the weight of his family's expectations, but now, with Lily by his side, he knew what it meant to live for himself. It wasn't about the company, the money, or the legacy. It was about creating something real, something that could stand the test of time. One evening, as they sat in their favorite cafe in the city, Ethan reached across the table and took Lily's hand. "I've been thinking," he said, his voice soft, "about everything. About us. I know we've been through a lot, but I want to build something that lasts. I want us to have everything we've ever dreamed of." Lily's heart swelled at his words. She had always feared that her past would hold her back from having the life she wanted. But now, with Ethan, she saw that anything was possible. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Ethan smiled, his eyes full of love. "I want to marry you, Lily. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. I don't care about the past or the things that have happened. I just want to be with you. Forever." Lily's breath caught in her throat, the words he spoke filling her with an overwhelming sense of joy. She had always known, deep down, that this was where their story was headed, but hearing him say it out loud made her heart race. "Ethan," she whispered, "are you sure?" Ethan laughed softly, squeezing her hand. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. You've shown me what it means to live, to truly be happy. I can't imagine my life without you. Tears filled Lily's eyes as she looked at him. I never thought I would find someone like you, she said, her voice shaking. I never thought I would have this. But with you, everything feels right. I want to spend my life with you too. Ethan leaned across the table, his lips brushing against hers in a gentle kiss. The world around them seemed to fade as they shared that moment, their love stronger than ever. It was the beginning of a new chapter, a chapter they would write together. Over the next few months, they began planning their future. They looked at wedding venues, discussed the kind of life they wanted to create, and dreamed about the adventures they would take. For Lily, it was a dream come true. She had never imagined that she would find a love so deep, so enduring. And for Ethan, it was a reminder of how far he had come. He had fought for everything in his life, his company, his family, his independence. But in the end, the one thing he had truly wanted was something simple: love. The wedding day arrived, and it was everything they had hoped for. The ceremony was small but intimate, held at a beautiful garden overlooking the ocean. Surrounded by a few close friends and family, they exchanged vows, promising to stand by each other through thick and thin. As they said their I dos, Ethan and Lily knew that this was just the beginning. They had overcome so much together, and now, with their future in front of them, they were ready for whatever life had to offer. As the sun set on their wedding day, they stood together, hand in hand, looking out at the horizon. We've made it, Ethan said softly, his voice filled with awe. Together, we've made it. Lily smiled, her heart full of love. We've only just begun, she replied. The best is yet to come. With the world at their feet and their hearts full of hope, Ethan and Lily walked into their future, ready to face whatever challenges and joys lay ahead. Their love had been tested, but it had never been stronger. Together, they knew they could overcome anything, because they had each other. And that, above all, was enough. I apologize for the earlier confusion. Here is the 13th part of your requested content, written according to the specified instructions. The months following their wedding were a time of transition for Ethan and Lily. The stress of the legal battles, the tension with Ethan's family, and the constant pressure of managing a multi-million-dollar company had finally started to fade, leaving space for the life they had always dreamed of. Together, they had built something solid, something real. The love they shared was a constant in their lives, and it was growing stronger every day. They decided to take things slowly, focusing on building a life that was centered on what truly mattered: each other. They spent their days exploring new places, traveling, and enjoying simple moments together. Whether it was a weekend getaway to a quiet cabin in the mountains or an evening at their favorite local restaurant, they cherished the time they had away from the chaos of their past. But with each passing day, the future began to feel less uncertain. For the first time in years, Ethan felt like he could breathe freely. He had everything he needed: love, stability, and a partner who would stand by him through anything. Lily, too, was finding peace. Her past had been full of uncertainty, and she had never known what it was like to truly feel secure. But with Ethan, she had found a sense of belonging she had always longed for. They had become a team, and it felt like nothing could break their bond. It wasn't just about their love for each other. It was about the life they were building together. As time went on, they both began to think more about their future and the possibility of having a family of their own. It was a subject they had touched on before, but now, it felt more real, more attainable. They talked about children, about raising a family, and about what kind of parents they wanted to be. For Lily, the idea of becoming a mother was a bit daunting. She had always dreamed of having a family, but her past had left her with scars that made it hard to believe she could give her children the life they deserved. She had never had the chance to see what a happy family looked like, and the fear of repeating the mistakes of her past lingered. But Ethan was patient, understanding. He reassured her that they would take their time and figure it out together. "We'll do it on our terms," he said one night, his voice full of conviction. "When you're ready, we'll be ready. And we'll be the kind of parents who love and support our children no matter what." Those words stuck with Lily, and slowly, she began to allow herself to believe that maybe she could do this. Maybe she could be the kind of mother she had always wanted to be. It wasn't easy, but with Ethan by her side, the future seemed full of possibilities. It was during this time of contemplation that a new challenge appeared on the horizon. Ethan's father, who had been silent since the trial, suddenly reached out. Ethan wasn't sure what to expect, but he couldn't ignore the message. His father had requested a meeting. The request was unexpected, given their strained relationship, but Ethan decided that it was time to face his past once and for all. With Lily at his side, he agreed to meet. The meeting was set at a private restaurant, a neutral space away from the prying eyes of the public. When they arrived, Ethan felt a familiar weight settle in his chest. His father was already sitting at a corner table, a glass of wine in hand. He looked up when they entered, his expression unreadable. "Ethan," he said coldly, standing to greet them. "Lily." Ethan nodded, taking a seat across from his father, with Lily sitting beside him. The air between them was tense, filled with unspoken words. His father didn't waste time. "I've been thinking a lot about everything that's happened," he began, his voice lower than usual. "And I wanted to offer you an olive branch." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "An olive branch?" "Yes," his father said, leaning forward slightly. "I know we've had our differences, and I may not have agreed with your decisions, but I want to make amends. I want to find a way for us to work together again. The company could use your leadership, Ethan. You've proven yourself, and I've come to realize that my way of doing things wasn't the right way." Ethan listened quietly, his mind racing. His father's words were unexpected, but he couldn't help but feel skeptical. It was hard to trust someone who had spent so much time trying to control him. "What exactly are you saying?" Ethan asked, his voice measured. "I'm saying that I want you to take the reins, Ethan," his father said, his tone sincere. "You've earned it. I've been holding on to things out of fear, but I've seen the way you've grown. I want to offer you the position as CEO. This time, it's your choice, not mine." Lily, who had been listening quietly, squeezed Ethan's hand. She could see the uncertainty in his eyes, and she knew this was a pivotal moment for him. Ethan took a deep breath, processing his father's words. For a moment, the world seemed to stop. He had fought for years to break free from his father's control, and now his father was offering him everything he had wanted. It was everything Ethan had dreamed of, yet something felt off. He looked at Lily, searching her face for any sign of doubt. She gave him a small, encouraging smile. "You don't have to take it, Ethan," she said softly. "You've already proven yourself, and you've built something on your own. This is your decision." Ethan nodded, turning back to his father. "I appreciate the offer," he said slowly, "but I'm not sure if it's the right move. I've built my life, and I've learned to live on my own terms. I don't need your approval anymore." His father looked at him, a flicker of frustration crossing his face. But there was also something else, a hint of respect. "I understand," he said quietly. "I wanted you to know that you have my support, even if it's not what I would have wanted before. I'm proud of you, Ethan, and I'm proud of the man you've become." For the first time, Ethan felt something shift inside him. He had been waiting for his father's approval his whole life, but now, in this moment, he realized he didn't need it. He had already achieved everything he had set out to do, and he had done it on his own terms. As they left the restaurant that night, hand in hand, Ethan felt a weight lift off his shoulders. The past had been a struggle, but now, with Lily by his side, he was finally free. They didn't need anyone's approval but their own. Together, they would create a life built on love, trust, and the future they wanted to build together. I apologize for the earlier confusion. Here is the 14th part of your requested content, written according to the specified instructions. After the meeting with his father, Ethan felt a sense of finality settle over him. The offer to take over the company as CEO was there, but in that moment, he realized that his life no longer revolved around the business or his father's approval. For the first time, he understood that what truly mattered was the life he had built with Lily. They had overcome so much together, and no matter the direction his father wanted to take, Ethan was ready to move forward on his own terms. Lily could see the shift in Ethan, a new clarity in his eyes. It was as if the weight of a lifetime of expectations had been lifted, and for the first time, Ethan was truly free. He had fought for his independence, for the right to be himself, and now, more than ever, he was ready to live that truth. But life wasn't all about personal victories. Their journey wasn't finished, and new challenges awaited them. Ethan and Lily spent the next few weeks traveling, taking short trips to get away from the pressures of the world. They were both eager to explore new places together, to make memories in the quiet moments, far from the chaos of the company and the stress of Ethan's family. Their travels took them to places they'd always dreamed of seeing, from quiet lakeside retreats to bustling cities they had never visited before. They even spent a week hiking in the mountains, where they had nothing but each other and the sound of the wind rustling through the trees. It was in these moments that their bond grew stronger. They shared stories, laughter, and the simple joys of life. In the mornings, they would sit together, watching the sun rise over a new landscape, and at night, they would talk until the stars filled the sky. Ethan had never felt so at peace, so content. But it wasn't just the traveling that had brought him peace. It was Lily. Her love and support had anchored him in ways he hadn't known he needed. He found himself thinking more about the future and the kind of life they wanted to build together. The business still loomed in the background, but it no longer held the same weight. As Ethan and Lily continued their travels, they began discussing what life after the company might look like. They had always talked about their dreams, but now they were planning for those dreams to become a reality. One evening, as they sat by a campfire after a long day of hiking, Ethan turned to Lily. "I've been thinking," he began, his voice calm, "about what I really want. What we both really want." Lily looked at him, intrigued. "What do you mean?" she asked. Ethan smiled, his eyes reflecting the glow of the fire. "I've spent so much time trying to live up to expectations, whether it was my father's or the company's, that I never really stopped to think about what would make me happy. What would make us happy? But now, with you, I can see the future more clearly." Lily's heart skipped a beat. "And what does that future look like?" she asked, her voice filled with anticipation. Ethan took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the decision ahead. "I want to spend more time with you, doing the things we love. I don't need the company or the pressure anymore. I want to create something with you. Maybe we buy a house, settle somewhere, and just live." Lily smiled, a tear slipping down her cheek. "I've always dreamed of a life like that," she whispered. "A life where I don't have to worry about what others expect, where I can just be me, be with you." Ethan reached out, wiping the tear from her cheek. "Then let's make that dream come true," he said softly. "We'll build a life, just the two of us, on our own terms." Over the next few months, Ethan and Lily began making plans for the future. Ethan officially stepped down from the company, handing over control to a trusted colleague, someone who shared his vision but was also capable of running things in a way that wouldn't burn him out. It was a difficult decision, but it was the right one. As he made the transition out of the company, Ethan realized that he was no longer defined by his title or his wealth. He was simply Ethan, and that was enough. They bought a small house on a quiet street, not too far from the city, but far enough to feel like a retreat. It was everything they had dreamed of, cozy, comfortable, and filled with possibilities. They spent their weekends working on the house, making it their own, and finding joy in the simple tasks of building a life together. Ethan also began to focus on his passion projects, something he had put on hold for years. He started working on a charity he had always dreamed of, helping underprivileged children get access to education. He had always been passionate about giving back, but his time at the company had left him with little energy for anything else. Now, with more free time, he could devote himself fully to something that mattered deeply to him. Lily, too, found her own path. She began working as a freelance designer, focusing on projects that allowed her to express her creativity. She had always been talented, but her self-doubt had held her back. Now, with Ethan's unwavering support, she found herself embracing her talent in ways she never thought possible. Together, they were building the life they had always wanted. It was a life of freedom, love, and mutual support. They weren't bound by the expectations of others or the pressure of wealth and status. They were free to define their own future, and they did so with love and hope in their hearts. As they stood in their new home, looking around at the life they had created, Ethan took Lily's hand. "This is just the beginning," he said softly. "The best is yet to come." Lily smiled, her eyes filled with joy and contentment. "I couldn't agree more," she said, squeezing his hand. "We've made it through everything. And now, we get to live our dream." They stood together, ready to face whatever came next, knowing that as long as they had each other, they could overcome anything. Their future was wide open, and it was theirs to create. I apologize for the earlier confusion. Here is the 15th part of your requested content, written according to the specified instructions. As the months continued to pass, the life Ethan and Lily had begun to build together continued to grow stronger, more fulfilling, and more grounded in love than ever before. The decision to leave the high-pressure world of corporate life and the constant tug-of-war with his family had been difficult, but it had been the right one. Ethan had found a new sense of purpose and clarity, one that centered around his passions, his values, and the woman he loved. No longer defined by his father's legacy or the company, he was free to create his own path. And Lily, with her unshakable support and belief in him, had become not only his partner in life, but his greatest inspiration. Together, they had worked on building the home of their dreams, making it their own little sanctuary where they could escape the world and focus on their future. The small, quiet house they had bought was everything they could have hoped for. Cozy, comfortable, and a reflection of their journey together. They filled it with love, laughter, and a sense of peace that had eluded them for so long. But despite the peace they had found, there was always the sense that something was missing. As they sat together one evening, enjoying the quiet comfort of their living room, Ethan turned to Lily with a thoughtful expression. "I've been thinking about something," he began, his voice serious. "What do you think about starting a family?" Lily's eyes softened as she looked at him. The idea had always been in the back of her mind, but she had never been entirely sure she was ready. After all, her own childhood had been a rocky one, filled with uncertainty and hardship. But now, with Ethan by her side, the idea of raising a family didn't seem so daunting. "I think it's something we've both talked about before," she said, her voice gentle. "But it's a big step. Are you sure you're ready?" Ethan smiled, his eyes filled with sincerity. "I'm ready if you are," he said. "I think we've built something strong together, and we're in a good place now. I don't want to wait anymore. I want us to start this next chapter of our lives." Lily felt a wave of emotion wash over her. She had always dreamed of having a family, but her fears and insecurities had held her back. She wasn't sure if she was ready to take on the responsibility of motherhood, but the love and support she had found in Ethan made her feel more certain than ever that they could do this together. "I think I'm ready," she whispered, her heart full of love and hope for the future. "Let's do this." Their decision to start a family brought them even closer, and they began to make plans. They researched everything from parenting styles to family vacations, excited for the future they would build together. Ethan's focus shifted from the pressures of work to the joy of creating a family, and Lily found herself dreaming of a life filled with love and laughter, of children running through the house, of quiet family nights, and of the unconditional bond that came with parenthood. As the months passed, they began preparing for the arrival of their first child. The anticipation and excitement filled their home, and every corner of their lives seemed to glow with the promise of what was to come. They painted the nursery together, choosing calming colors that reflected their love for one another and their vision for the future. The small, quiet house that had once been a refuge now felt like a warm, welcoming home, ready for the new life they would soon bring into it. Yet, even as they looked forward to the future with hope, life had a way of throwing unexpected challenges their way. One evening, as they were finishing dinner, Ethan received a call from one of his old colleagues at the company. His heart sank as he listened, the words filling him with an unease he couldn't ignore. His colleague explained that the company was facing some major financial setbacks, and there were concerns about its future stability. Despite Ethan's decision to step away, the company had continued to struggle, and now the pressure was mounting on his former colleagues to make drastic changes. "Ethan," the voice on the other end of the phone said, "we're going to need your help again. We're running out of options." Ethan felt a mix of frustration and guilt. He had worked hard to let go of the company, but hearing about its struggles made him feel as if he couldn't completely walk away. He looked over at Lily, who was watching him quietly. "What do you think?" he asked, knowing that this decision would affect both of them. Lily sat quietly for a moment, thinking carefully. She knew how much Ethan had sacrificed to get to this point, to find peace and focus on their future together. But she also knew how important it was for him to feel like he was doing the right thing, both for himself and for the people who had been part of his journey. "I think," she said slowly, "you have to listen to your heart. You've already made so many sacrifices, Ethan. Whatever you decide, I'll be right here with you." Her words filled him with a sense of calm. He had already made a new life for himself, a life that was built on love and stability, and he realized that no matter what happened, he had already found everything he needed. "I'll talk to them," he said finally, a sense of resolution in his voice. "But no matter what happens, I won't let it change what we have." The decision wasn't easy, but it was one that Ethan had to make. He would offer his guidance to the company, but he was no longer going to let it consume his life. The family they had started to build would always be his priority. With Lily by his side, he knew they could face whatever challenges came their way. As they sat together that night, the weight of the world seemed to lift, replaced by the quiet confidence that had become a hallmark of their relationship. They had already overcome so much, and now, with the future in their hands, they were ready to face whatever came next, together. I apologize for the earlier confusion. Here is the 16th part of your requested content, written according to the specified instructions. The decision to step back into the world of the company was not an easy one for Ethan. He had made a promise to himself and Lily that he was done with the stress, the expectations, and the constant battle for control. But when the call came, and the familiar voices of his old colleagues reached out to him, he found himself caught between his past and his future. He had walked away from the company, but the company hadn't quite let go of him. As Ethan prepared to meet with his former colleagues, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. He had spent so much time focusing on the company, his family's legacy, and his own success that he had forgotten what it felt like to just live for himself. Lily had been a constant reminder of what truly mattered: love, peace, and the life they were building together. That night, after discussing the situation with Lily, Ethan made his decision. He would offer his guidance, but he would do it on his terms. He wouldn't let the company dictate his life again. It was time to show them that he could walk away while still making a difference. The meeting the next day was tense. Ethan sat across from his former colleagues, listening to their pleas. They told him how the company was struggling, how his leadership was the only thing that could save them. Ethan could see the desperation in their eyes, but he also saw something else. This was not the company he had left behind. The company he had built, the company that had once been his pride, had changed. It had become something that no longer aligned with his values, with the life he wanted to create. "I hear what you're saying," Ethan said, his voice calm but firm. "But I'm not the person you need me to be anymore. I've found something that's more important than the company. I've found peace." His colleagues looked at him in disbelief, but Ethan didn't flinch. He had spent so long trying to prove himself to others, trying to live up to expectations. But now, he was living for himself, for the future he and Lily had decided to build together. The conversation didn't last much longer. Ethan made it clear that he wouldn't be taking over again, but he would offer advice if needed. He had moved on, and that was something they would have to accept. As he left the office, Ethan felt a sense of relief wash over him. The weight of the past had finally lifted. He had faced his old life one last time and walked away from it, knowing that he had made the right decision. When he got home, Lily was waiting for him, her eyes filled with anticipation. Ethan walked in and pulled her into his arms, holding her close. "I did it," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I told them I'm done." Lily smiled softly, feeling a wave of pride and relief wash over her. "You did the right thing, Ethan," she whispered. "You're free." For the first time in a long time, Ethan felt free. He had always been tied to the expectations of his family and the pressures of the business world, but now, with Lily by his side, he was free to pursue the life they had always wanted. Over the next few weeks, they settled into a new routine. Ethan focused on his charity work, spending time with children who needed guidance, and Lily continued to grow her freelance design business. Their life was simple, but it was filled with meaning. They were no longer defined by wealth or status. Instead, they had created a life that was rooted in love, purpose, and mutual support. As they walked through life together, they found joy in the little things, working on their home, cooking dinner together, and simply enjoying each other's company. One evening, as they sat together on their porch, watching the sunset over their quiet neighborhood, Ethan turned to Lily. "I've been thinking about something," he said, his voice thoughtful. Lily looked at him, intrigued. "What's that?" she asked. "I've been thinking about the future," Ethan said, a smile playing on his lips. "About everything we've been through and everything we want to do. I feel like we're just getting started." Lily smiled, a sense of contentment filling her heart. "I know what you mean. We've come so far, and we've built something amazing together." but I feel like the best is yet to come. Ethan nodded, feeling a deep sense of gratitude for everything they had. I agree, he said softly. We've faced so much, but together, we've made it through. I'm ready for whatever comes next, as long as I'm with you. Lily's heart swelled as she looked at him. She had never imagined a life like this, full of peace, love, and possibility. She had always dreamed of finding someone to share her life with, someone who would support her and stand by her no matter what. And now, with Ethan, she had everything she had ever hoped for. As they sat together, hand in hand, watching the sky turn from pink to purple, they both knew that they had found something rare, something worth fighting for. The future was still uncertain, but together, they felt ready to face it. They had each other, and that was enough. The life they had built together was more than they could have ever dreamed of. It wasn't just about love. It was about building a future based on trust, mutual respect, and the courage to face whatever challenges came their way. They knew that, no matter what, they would always have each other, and that was all they needed. I apologize for the earlier confusion. Here is the 17th part of your requested content, written according to the specified instructions. The days following Ethan's decision to step away from the company were filled with an unexpected sense of calm. He had spent years defining himself through his work, the company his family had built, and the success that came with it. But now, as he shifted his focus to a new chapter of his life, he felt the freedom he had longed for. It wasn't about the wealth, the power, or the legacy anymore. It was about the life he was creating with Lily. They had become a team in every sense of the word, and the future felt like a blank canvas they could fill together. The charity work that Ethan had started began to grow, slowly but steadily. His time and attention were no longer divided between the company and his personal life. Now he could fully commit to causes that mattered most to him, helping children in need, creating opportunities for education, and fostering hope in underserved communities. Lily, too, had started to make waves in her freelance design business. She had always been passionate about art and design, but had never truly believed in her own abilities. With Ethan's encouragement and support, she began to take risks, pushing herself to create projects that were more ambitious and rewarding. The work they did together, side by side, felt like a partnership in every sense. It wasn't just about building a life. It was about building something meaningful. One evening, as they sat together on the couch after a long day, Lily turned to Ethan, her eyes thoughtful. "Ethan, have you thought about the next step?" she asked, her voice soft but filled with curiosity. Ethan looked at her, his mind momentarily drifting. "What do you mean?" he asked. Lily smiled gently. "I mean, we've made a new life for ourselves. But what about everything else? I know we've talked about having a family, but do you think we're really ready?" Ethan leaned back in his chair, his gaze softening as he took in Lily's words. It was a question that had been on his mind for some time. Their lives had shifted so dramatically over the past year, and while the transition had been filled with hope, there were still moments when the reality of their decision settled heavily on them both. "I think we're ready," Ethan said, his voice steady, but tinged with the uncertainty that had lingered. "But I want to make sure we're both really ready. It's not just about having a child. It's about creating a future that's filled with love, stability, and support. I want to give our child the kind of life that we both never had, the kind of life that's safe and full of promise." Lily nodded, understanding the depth of his words. "I want that too, Ethan. I want us to give them everything we've always dreamed of. I want to raise a family full of love, where they feel like they belong, where they never have to question their worth." Ethan reached out and took her hand, squeezing it gently. "Then we'll do it," he said firmly. "We'll make it happen. Together." The decision to move forward with starting a family became a new source of strength for both of them. They began to plan in earnest, discussing every detail of their future with an unwavering commitment to each other. They knew the road ahead wouldn't be without its challenges, but they were ready. The life they had built together was strong, and they both believed that they had the foundation they needed to take on the next chapter. As the months went by, Lily began to feel the changes in her body, and the reality of their decision became tangible. Ethan was right there beside her every step of the way, attending doctor's appointments, supporting her through the physical and emotional changes, and sharing in the excitement of preparing for the arrival of their first child. They painted the nursery, decorated with soft pastel colors, and carefully selected everything they thought their baby would need. It was a simple life, but it was everything they had ever wanted. One evening, as they sat in the nursery, surrounded by baby clothes and soft toys, Lily looked at Ethan, her heart full. "This is real, isn't it?" she asked, her voice full of wonder. Ethan smiled, pulling her close. "It's real. It's everything we've worked for." They sat there for a while, just the two of them, dreaming of the future, of the child they would raise together. But life had a way of throwing curveballs when you least expected it. Just as they were beginning to feel ready for their new arrival, an unexpected challenge arose. Ethan's mother, who had been silent for months after their confrontation, reached out again. The message was brief, but to the point. She wanted to meet. Ethan felt a wave of dread wash over him. He had worked so hard to distance himself from the toxic relationship he had with his family, but now it seemed that they were pulling him back in. He looked at Lily, unsure of how to approach the situation. "She wants to meet," he said quietly. "She says it's important." Lily's face softened with understanding. "What do you think? Are you ready for this?" Ethan hesitated. "I'm not sure. Part of me doesn't want to face it. But another part of me feels like I should. Like I need to make peace with this for the sake of our future." Lily took his hand, her touch comforting. "Whatever you decide, I'm with you. You've made so much progress already, Ethan. You've built a life that's full of love. If meeting with her is what you need to do, then we'll do it together." Ethan nodded, feeling a sense of peace settle over him. He knew that, no matter what happened, the family he had with Lily was the one that mattered most. They had built something that was strong, and no one could take that away from them. The future was theirs to shape, and whatever challenges came their way, they would face them as a team. I apologize for the earlier confusion. Here is the 18th part of your requested content, written according to the specified instructions. The meeting with Ethan's mother was set for the following week, and as the day approached, Ethan found himself filled with a mixture of dread and uncertainty. He had worked so hard to distance himself from the toxic influence of his family, especially his mother, but now, she was asking for a meeting. He had no idea what she wanted, or why she was reaching out after months of silence. The thought of reopening old wounds made him hesitant, but a part of him knew that this might be the only chance to make peace, to close that chapter once and for all. He had found the life he had always dreamed of with Lily, and nothing in the world could replace the love and stability they had built together. But still, there was the nagging feeling that he needed to confront his past, to at least try to understand where things had gone wrong with his family. The night before the meeting, Ethan and Lily sat together in the living room, discussing what was to come. Ethan had been quiet, his mind racing with conflicting thoughts, and Lily could sense his anxiety. She reached over, taking his hand in hers. "You don't have to do this if you're not ready," she said softly. "I'm with you, no matter what you decide." Ethan looked at her, his eyes filled with gratitude. He had been so used to carrying the weight of everything alone, but with Lily by his side, he felt stronger than he ever had before. "I know," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I don't know why, but I feel like I need to face her. I need to know if there's any way to make peace, even if it's just for me." Lily nodded, her heart swelling with pride for him. "You've already come so far. Ethan, whatever happens, just remember that you've built something beautiful here. She can't take that away." The next day, they arrived at the restaurant where the meeting was to take place. Ethan felt his stomach churn as they walked inside, his eyes scanning the room. His mother was already sitting at a corner table, her posture straight and rigid. She was looking down at the table, not noticing them as they approached. Ethan's heart raced as they made their way to the table, and for a moment, he wondered if he was making a mistake. But then he looked at Lily, who gave him a reassuring smile. He took a deep breath, steadied himself, and sat down across from his mother. She looked up, her eyes briefly flicking over to Lily before focusing on Ethan. "Ethan," she said, her voice colder than he remembered. "It's good to see you." Ethan nodded, unsure of what to say. "You wanted to talk," he said, his tone neutral. "I'm listening." His mother took a slow breath, as if carefully choosing her words. "I've had time to think," she began, "and I realized that I haven't been the mother you needed. I've been so focused on what I wanted for you, what I thought was best, that I didn't see what you truly wanted." Ethan's brow furrowed. Was this some kind of apology? Or was it just another attempt to manipulate him? He wasn't sure. "What is it that you want from me now?" he asked, his voice steady but guarded. She hesitated for a moment before speaking again. I want to make things right, she said quietly. I know I've hurt you, and I know I've driven you away. But I don't want to keep living in the past. I want to be part of your life again, Ethan. I want to see you succeed, but more than that, I want to be there for you as your mother. Ethan's heart tightened in his chest. This wasn't what he had expected. He had come into this meeting prepared for more of the same, more of her attempts to control him, to make him feel guilty for living his own life. But this was different. For the first time, it seemed like she was actually trying to change, trying to understand him. He looked over at Lily, who was sitting quietly beside him, her eyes full of support. He took a deep breath, considering his words carefully. I appreciate you saying that, he said slowly. But I can't just forget everything that happened. You've hurt me more times than I can count. And while I want peace, I don't know if I can just forgive and forget. His mother nodded, her expression unreadable. I know, she said quietly. And I'm not asking you to. I just want you to know that I'm here. I'm not going to push you anymore. But I hope, in time, we can find a way to rebuild what we had. Ethan sat back in his chair, processing her words. For a long time, he had wanted nothing more than to walk away from his family entirely, to sever all ties and move on. But now, as he sat across from his mother, he realized that cutting ties completely wasn't going to give him the peace he sought. He had built a life with Lily, a life that was full of love and promise. That was the future he was focusing on. But maybe, just maybe, there was a way to let go of the past without completely destroying the possibility of reconciliation. I'm willing to try, Ethan said slowly. But it's going to take time. I need to know that I can trust you again. And that doesn't happen overnight. His mother looked at him, her eyes filled with something close to regret. I understand, she said softly. And I'll wait. I just want you to know that I'm here, whenever you're ready. The rest of the meeting passed in relative silence, with a few more words exchanged, but nothing as significant as that first moment. When they left the restaurant, Ethan felt a weight lifted from his shoulders, but also a new sense of responsibility. He had taken a step toward healing, but he knew that this was just the beginning. As they walked hand in hand, Ethan knew that no matter what happened with his mother, his life was now in his hands. And with Lily by his side, he felt ready for whatever came next. I apologize for the earlier confusion. Here is the 19th part of your requested content, written according to the specified instructions. The days following Ethan's meeting with his mother were filled with mixed emotions. The weight of his decision to give her another chance lingered in the back of his mind, but there was a strange sense of relief as well. He had made peace with the idea of opening that door again, even if it was only a crack. He didn't expect things to change overnight, but he knew that he had done something important, something that would allow him to move forward without the past constantly haunting him. Lily noticed the subtle shift in Ethan after the meeting. He was quieter, more reflective, but in a way that made him seem more at peace with himself. She could see that the decision to confront his mother had been difficult for him, but she also saw the strength in him for being willing to try. She knew how much his family's expectations had weighed on him over the years. How are you feeling? Lily asked one evening as they sat together, their feet up on the couch after a long day. Ethan smiled softly, the familiar weight of his life with Lily making everything else seem a little less heavy. Better, he said, looking at her with gratitude in his eyes. I think I've finally come to terms with everything, at least with her. It's like I can breathe easier now, knowing that I've tried to make peace. I don't have to carry that resentment anymore. Lily leaned her head on his shoulder, the warmth of his words settling in her heart. She knew how much that moment had meant to him, and she was proud of him for taking that step. I'm glad, she whispered. You've worked so hard for this peace, and I think you deserve it. As the weeks passed, life continued to evolve in unexpected ways. Ethan's charity work gained momentum, as did Lily's design business. They had created a rhythm, a balance that allowed them both to pursue their passions while also nurturing the relationship that had become the center of their lives. They spent their weekends exploring new places, enjoying quiet mornings together, and looking forward to the future they were building side by side. Yet, despite the peace they had found, something lingered in Ethan's mind. While he had worked hard to distance himself from his family, he couldn't ignore the deep-rooted feelings that still existed between him and his parents. The complex web of guilt, expectation, and love was not something that could be easily untangled. One afternoon, As they were sitting on the porch, sipping coffee and watching the world go by, Ethan turned to Lily with a thoughtful expression. "I think I need to make one more step," he said, his voice contemplative. Lily raised an eyebrow, sensing the weight of his words. "What do you mean?" she asked softly. Ethan took a deep breath before speaking. "I think it's time to talk to my father. I need to face him, once and for all. We've both been avoiding this conversation for so long, and I don't think I can move on completely without doing this. It's not about going back to the company or anything like that. It's about finally setting things straight with him." Lily's heart ached at the thought. She knew how hard this was for Ethan, how much his father's influence had shaped his life, both in positive and negative ways. "Are you sure you're ready for that?" she asked, her voice full of concern. "I know how much it hurt you, all those years of trying to meet his expectations." Ethan nodded, his gaze steady. "I think I'm ready. I'm not going back to being the person he wanted me to be, but I do think I need to hear him out. Maybe this is the last thing I need to do to fully let go." Lily reached out and took his hand in hers. "I'll be here, no matter what happens," she said softly. Ethan squeezed her hand, feeling a wave of gratitude wash over him. "Thank you," he whispered. "You make everything feel possible." The next day, Ethan reached out to his father, requesting a meeting. The response came quickly, and before long, the two of them were sitting across from each other in a private, neutral setting. His father looked older, wearier, but there was still a familiar sharpness in his eyes. Ethan had no idea what this conversation would bring, but he knew it had to happen. "Ethan," his father began, his voice tense but surprisingly calm. "I didn't expect to hear from you after everything that happened, but I'm glad you called." Ethan took a deep breath, his heart racing. "I don't know what I'm expecting from this conversation," he said, his voice steady. "But I feel like it's something I need to do. To move on. To make peace." His father's eyes narrowed slightly, as if searching for meaning in Ethan's words. "What do you want then?" he asked bluntly. Ethan hesitated for a moment, then spoke from the heart. "I want you to know that I'm not angry anymore. But I also want you to understand that I've made my own choices. I've built a life that I'm proud of, and I'm not asking for your approval anymore. I just want to live my life without feeling like I have to prove something to you." His father sat in silence for a moment, clearly processing his words. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer, but still tinged with old frustration. "I don't always understand your decisions, Ethan, but I can see that you're happy now. And maybe that's all I need to see." There was a long pause before Ethan spoke again. "I've learned that happiness doesn't come from meeting expectations or following someone else's path. It comes from choosing your own way. And I want you to know that I'm okay. I'm not the same person I was before." His father nodded, a faint, almost imperceptible smile on his face. "I may never fully understand, but I can see that you've changed. And maybe that's enough." The weight that had hung between them for so long seemed to lift slightly. Ethan felt a sense of relief, but also a deep sadness that he hadn't been able to fully repair their relationship. Still, in that moment, he realized that peace didn't always mean getting everything you wanted. Sometimes, it meant letting go. As they parted ways, Ethan felt lighter. He had finally faced his father and said everything he needed to say. And now, with Lily by his side, he was ready to embrace the future, knowing that he had made the choice to live authentically, without the weight of his past holding him back. "I apologize for the earlier confusion. Here is the 20th and final part of your requested content, written according to the specified instructions." With the weight of his past finally lifted, Ethan found himself at a crossroads. His meeting with his father had been difficult, yet liberating in its own way. It had provided him with the closure he didn't know he needed, but more importantly, it had reinforced the truth that he had already created a new life for himself. A life that was full of love, hope, and the promise of a future built on his own terms. As he sat with Lily that evening, looking out over the small yard of their home, Ethan felt a deep sense of gratitude. The house they had worked so hard to create together was more than just walls and rooms. It was a symbol of everything they had fought for. It represented their shared dreams, their sacrifices, and their unwavering commitment to one another. He thought back to those early days when everything felt uncertain, when the pressures of his family, his career, and his own fears seemed to overwhelm him. Now, as he sat beside Lily, he realized how far they had come. They had faced the toughest of challenges together and emerged stronger, more united than ever. The love they shared was no longer just a feeling. It was the foundation of everything they had built. "I've been thinking," Ethan said, breaking the comfortable silence between them. Lily turned to him, a soft smile on her face. "About what?" she asked. Ethan looked out at the horizon, his eyes filled with a quiet resolve. "About everything we've been through. The struggles, the heartache, and all the decisions that brought us to this point. I think we've done more than just survive. We've thrived. And now, we're ready for whatever comes next." Lily squeezed his hand, her heart swelling with pride. "I know we are," she replied softly. "We've built something incredible, and we've done it together. There's nothing we can't face." Ethan smiled, feeling a deep sense of peace wash over him. "I love you," he said, his voice full of emotion. "More than I can ever put into words." Lily's eyes glistened with unshed tears, and she leaned in to kiss him softly. "I love you too," she whispered. "We've made it, Ethan. Together, we've made it." As they pulled away from each other, their hands still intertwined, they both knew that their journey wasn't over. It was only just beginning. The future was full of uncertainty, but they no longer feared it. They had built a life that was uniquely their own, one that was grounded in love, trust, and the shared vision of a future they both believed in. In the months that followed, life continued to unfold in beautiful, unexpected ways. Ethan and Lily's family grew, and the joy they felt was immeasurable. They welcomed a child into their lives, and the moment their baby was born, they knew their hearts had found their true purpose. They were a family, and the love they shared would be the legacy they left behind. They didn't need the validation of others, nor the approval of anyone but each other. They had everything they needed right there in their arms: love, family, and the freedom to live their lives the way they chose. With each passing day, they continued to grow, to evolve, and to support each other through the challenges and triumphs that life brought. Their journey had not been without its difficulties, but it had been worth every step. They had faced their fears, conquered their pasts, and built a future filled with hope. And as they watched their child take their first steps, they knew that the love they had created would continue to guide them through every stage of their lives. They were no longer bound by the chains of their past. Together, they had forged a path to a future that was full of possibility. The road ahead was theirs to travel, and they would travel it side by side, hand in hand, with a love that would endure whatever came their way. I apologize for the earlier confusion. Here is the SEO-friendly description based on the entire story you've requested. In this captivating journey of self-discovery and transformation, follow the gripping narrative of a young millionaire who, after years of living under the weight of family expectations, begins to forge his own path. As he navigates the complexities of wealth, love, and family, this story explores the deep emotional struggles that come with trying to break free from a legacy while seeking a life of happiness and fulfillment. Alongside his devoted partner, he embarks on a journey of healing, where millionaire stories are woven with themes of love, personal growth, and finding true peace. With challenges at every turn, including reconciling with estranged family members, our protagonist learns that true success isn't about wealth. It's about creating meaningful relationships and living authentically. As the couple faces unexpected twists, their bond only grows stronger, proving that even amidst the pressure and complexities of millionaire stories, the real reward lies in the connections we build. The story culminates in a realization that the most valuable thing in life is not status or riches, but love and personal happiness. This rich tale reminds us that no matter how difficult the path may seem, every millionaire story has the potential for transformation, self-discovery, and a future filled with hope. Watch as they build a life that transcends wealth and embraces what truly matters in these unforgettable millionaire stories.